So we saw last night both Manchester City and Sergio Aguero take to social media to announce that after 10 years of trophies and goals galore, the Argentinian forward is going to be leaving the club when his contract expires in the summer. But after such a long period of time at that club, what is next for Sergio Aguero? What's next for Manchester City? And where do they both go from here? We're going to talk about that on this video. Welcome back to the video. I hope you're well. It's Budge here. You're tuned in to Talk to Budge. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please wipe your feet before you come in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you leave a comment at the end of this video. I'm sharing my perspective, my point of view, but I also want to hear from you and hear what you have to say on the matter and the topic, of course, that we're discussing in this video, which is Sergio Aguero and Manchester City. So we saw him post, we saw Manchester City post, and we heard from the chairman, Khaldoon Al-Mubarak, speaking about the fact that Sergio Aguero has been a proper servant of the club over the last 10 seasons and 10 years. Of course, he joined the club from Atletico Madrid in 2011 and has written himself and etched himself in folklore for Manchester City with the goals that he scored, with the importance of the goals that he scored, and all of the trophies that he's won whilst being at the club. Khaldoon Al-Mubarak did actually come out and say that he's going to be given a trophy together with Yaya Toure and David Silva for their services to the club, which is brilliant. Of course, it's great that we see players getting their accolades and getting their flowers whilst they're still alive to smell them, as some people like to say. So yeah, 100% a good move from Manchester City and everyone involved, because of course he is absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the legends of the club. Now, of course, I mentioned on this platform we need to give him his flowers as well. So just a quick run through of what he has achieved whilst being at City. Since signing for City in 2011, he scored 257 goals in 384 appearances. He's actually the fourth highest goal scorer in Premier League history with 181 goals, and only Alan Shearer, Wayne Rooney and Andy Cole have scored more than him. He's got the best minutes to goal ratio in the history of the Premier League at the moment as well. And of course is the highest scoring import in the Premier League. So a foreign player playing in the Premier League, he scored the most goals, all right? Of course, eclipsing Thierry Henry. Whilst being at City, he's won 4 Premier League titles, 1 FA Cup, 5 Carabao Cups and 3 Community Shields. And what's really, really interesting as well is the fact that he scored 20 plus league goals in 6 out of 9 of the seasons he's been in the Premier League prior to this season. So, you know, the record speaks for itself. He is a prolific goal scorer and has been from the off. You know, on occasions you see that players need a little bit of time to bed in and settle into the Premier League because, of course, it's the most competitive league in Europe and it's difficult at times. We've seen players that have bagged goals abroad come here and struggle. But that wasn't the case for Sergio Aguero. He hit the ground running straight away. And I remember on his first, in his first game on his debut for Manchester City, which was against Swansea back in 2011, he actually bagged a brace and got an assist for David Silva. An assist was pretty ridiculous. But I think the pick of the bunch was that second goal. You know, he took a touch to push it wide and drove a power driver into the bottom left-hand corner to score his second goal. Of course, everyone will remember that goal that he scored on the final day of the 2011-2012 Premier League campaign, where it was Manchester United and Manchester City neck and neck for the title right up until the death. And he pulled out that goal out of nowhere to seal the Premier League, the first Premier League for Manchester City. And it was just, yeah, like that probably is going to go down as the greatest moment in Premier League history. And so he's of course not going to be forgotten anytime soon. But like I said, we've got to give him his flowers and his accolades, because he has been an absolute, gargantuan in the Premier League whilst he's been here. Now, what does this mean for him in terms of his next steps after he leaves? I wouldn't be surprised if he went back to his native of Argentina. We've seen with a lot of South American players, when they sort of get into the twilight of their career, many of them like to go back to Argentina and see out the rest of their careers in familiar territory. So I wouldn't be too surprised. However, at the age of 32, I still feel like he has quite a bit to offer. There have been links with him going to Barcelona. But of course, it's obviously well stated how much financial difficulty they are in at the moment, and whether they could afford to take on his wages and what he'd expect to earn, with all of the issues that they have surrounding Messi's earnings and his wages, and the fact that the club is financially stricken, and their transfer budget, even though technically they wouldn't really be paying a fee for Aguero because he's going to be going on a free. But with all things regarding finances at Barcelona, it does make it a difficult one to see them get over the line. He could potentially go to the MLS and go out to America potentially. That is a viable option for him. There's been links connecting him to Inter Milan potentially, which could be interesting if there is another club that goes in for Lautaro Martinez, for example. Although I don't see that potentially happening this summer as well, because with COVID and all of the impact that COVID has had on clubs' finances, you think of the kind of fee that would be attached to someone like a Lautaro Martinez of Inter Milan. I think it would be difficult. I don't imagine that he's going to leave this summer, but we'll have to wait and see what happens in that landscape. And of course, there's been some rumours doing the rounds of with him potentially going to Chelsea. Again, I don't really see that happening. I think after being such a long-standing servant of one club, and the fact that he's endeared himself to the fans of Manchester City, I don't think that he's going to want to move to Chelsea, to another domestic rival, particularly because of the fact that he will have obviously a much more competition and see game time limited because of the fact that they still have other players in that position that they've signed recently for big money, who will also need to play. People like Timo Werner, for example. So what he does, of course, remains to be seen. It's interesting, like I said, at his age of only 32, he still has lots of options at his disposal. I think he could really go anywhere. But I get the feeling that he's going to want to go to a warmer climate and maybe a league that is a slightly less demanding than the Premier League, shall I say. What does this mean in terms of Manchester City? So, of course, there were rumours that they were looking for another striker come the summer. I think this just nails it down and cements the fact that they 100% will be going out into the market to recruit in that area when the transfer window opens. And Pep in particular has obviously managed to work a system so far this season that has worked really, really well with the whole false nine, and Kevin De Bruyne playing in that false nine position, and of course the interchangeable positions with the front three and the midfield three and so on and so forth. And the fact that he's played that system has paid dividends for players like Gundogan, who is going through his best goal scoring season in his career so far because of the system that Manchester City are playing. And whilst it has been very successful for them, I mean, they're still challenging on all four fronts, domestically and in Europe so far this season. Whilst it has been very successful for them and it's paid dividends because, teams aren't familiar with that system. So, to defend against it is quite difficult. Whilst it's paid dividends for them, of course, it has been a system that Pep's hand has pretty much been forced to play because of the injuries and illness to Sergio Aguero and the fact that he's not been available for selection for large parts of the season, and also because of the fact that Gabriel Jesus isn't someone that that's Pep. He instills his complete and utter trust and belief in. I don't think he trusts him completely, and for those reasons, I feel like he absolutely is going to go big in the summer and recruit a striker. Because even though this system is working well at the moment with the false nine, you always do want to have at least a striker that you can rely on and depend on. And if he needs to change it up, which we've seen Pep do on a number of occasions, he likes to mix things up. He likes to change his formation and whatnot. At least having a striker that can score goals at your disposal is very important. You want someone who can press from the front, someone who is prolific, someone who can link well with other players and bring the midfield players and the wide men into play, right? And whilst Gabriel Jesus has displayed some of those qualities, I don't think he is necessarily the rounded package that Pep wants in the team, or someone that Pep can completely rely on. And in terms of the links with City and strikers, we've obviously seen them being linked heavily with Danny Ings of Southampton. Of course, Danny Ings is in the final year of his contract as well, and at present he hasn't decided to sign an extension with Southampton. He's of course only 28 years of age. Tried and tested in the Premier League, scoring goals for Southampton, who don't necessarily create a lot of chances, so would definitely be an option that could be interesting for a City who we know create goal chances galore and opportunities galore for their strikers. So, you put him in a team that create more chances, he could be even more prolific than he has been so far at Southampton. So that's one that's definitely interesting to watch. Of course, every man and his dog has been linked with Erling Haaland. I mean, who wouldn't be? The guy's an absolute goal machine. He's an absolute monster. Second in the goal scoring charts at the moment for the top goal scorers in the Bundesliga, only behind Lewandowski. So that is another potential option. Of course, he's also been linked with Chelsea. And the rumour is that they're willing to spend whatever it takes in order to bring him to the club. That's also one that we can look out for, because I think it's not just going to be Chelsea and City, but every single club, Real Madrid there as well, potentially, who will all be fighting for the signature of Erling Haaland. You also have Romelu Lukaku, who's obviously plying his trade at the moment at Inter Milan, and looking at the charts and all of the different stats and metrics over in Serie A at the moment, he is topping the charts too. Certainly for Inter Milan, he's creating the most chances, he's scoring the most goals, he's getting the most assists and all of that kind of stuff. And of course, a lot of football fans will remember him from his time in the Premier League for Everton, his loan stints, his time at Manchester United most recently, and there's been so much spoken about his rawness and his roughness and the fact that he isn't very polished, his baggy first touch and all the rest of it. But since moving to Serie A and playing as the target man for Inter Milan, he has definitely come on leaps and bounds, and he's developed his game quite a bit since moving out there under Antonio Conte. And that will also be a very interesting one to monitor and look out for. The one other hat that I wanted to potentially throw in the ring is someone who is going under the radar a little bit, and I think it's particularly because of the fact that Erling Haaland is drawing all the plaudits. But another striker in the Bundesliga who actually has scored the same amount of goals in the Bundesliga as Erling Haaland, albeit at a worse, slightly worse conversion rate, is Andre Silva, who is the Portuguese striker who plays for Eintracht Frankfurt. He's 25 years old, and so far this season he's scored 21 goals in 24 games, right? So he's only behind Lewandowski and Erling Haaland in the goal scoring charts at the moment, and he's certainly one to watch. I think he's one that's gone under the radar. It is his most prolific season to date so far, so he's coming into his own a little bit in this season. But I think if you're looking for a striking option which is going to be relatively cheaper than the people that I mentioned before in terms of Erling Haaland and Romelu Lukaku, of course, Danny Ings could potentially go for a free or go for a very, very small fee when he does eventually move from Southampton, if he decides to. That would be the only other very cost-effective option for Manchester City outside of an Andre Silva, who I think wouldn't necessarily command a huge and exorbitant fee, or certainly not to the scale of a Romelu Lukaku or an Erling Haaland. But I think still is a very, very viable option. And even if Manchester City don't get him in the summer, I've definitely got a feeling that he is one that a lot of other Premier League teams could potentially go for. So let's watch this space, of course. But he is a player that I do expect to see in the Premier League at some point in the near future. Like I said, he's gone under the radar. He's been quite prolific this season, but because, of course, Erling Haaland is the darling of the media at the moment, and because of the fact that he is still so young and breaking all the records that he is, of course, naturally he is drawing all the plaudits and getting all the attention. But I think Andre Silva is certainly one to watch. So let's watch this space. Aguero's been an absolute brilliant addition to the Premier League, and deserves all of the credit and all of the accolades that he no doubt will get. And of course, he's deserving of the statue that he's going to get at Manchester City. He's given us some great memories whilst he's been here. So, of course, we need to give him his flowers. But what this means for Manchester City going forward and in the future is very, very interesting come the transfer window this summer. So we'll, of course, wait in anticipation for what they're going to do. But let me know what you think in the comments. Give me your perspective, your point of view. Who do you feel is a realistic and likely target for Manchester City coming in the summer? Let me know what you think. And for now, that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Budge, over and out. Catch you in a bit. Yeah.